Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you again to Cruz and Peter. It was a great presentation and probably one of the better ones that the city has presented. Very positive, very, very helpful. So thank you again. Al asked me if I thought I could add something to the meeting tonight, and I said, yeah, about 15 minutes. Anyway, on the morning of June 9th, which was a week ago yesterday, the High-Speed Rail Authority held a meeting in Los Angeles at the Ronald Reagan State Building. And very generously, the city supplied a bus from City Hall to downtown. I think about 14 or 15 of us took advantage of it. There was probably a good 20 or 30 other people that drove themselves down there or took the train downtown and attended the meeting. All 9 members of the High-Speed Rail Authority were in attendance. The other person that is part of the 9 was Dan Richards, who is the chairman of that High-Speed Rail Authority, and he was there as well. Kind of felt sorry for him because with his job at that meeting, I think about the only friend he had there was probably his alarm clock from the morning that woke him up to be there. Wasn't very friendly for him. But at any rate, the reason for the meeting, as he told us, was for the High-Speed Rail Authority directors to hear from the community, from the communities and the people that live in the communities that are affected by the high-speed rail. And that's what happened. There were more than 353 people, actually there was 353 people in the auditorium, because that's how many seats there were. And then outside, they graciously and generously put up seats, about 50 or 60 seats, and a flat screen TV so that the proceedings that were going on in the auditorium could be monitored as well. And they had a big turnout. They filled that up. The other thing that was interesting about that, there was a lot of highway patrol officers monitoring the meeting, and there were a lot standing around in the hallways. That's because Governor Brown was on the 2nd floor having a meeting about water that people didn't know about. So having said all that, and we made our way down there, and we were treated well. The board, I believed, was attentive, did their best to take notes. You could see them taking notes and making sure that the voices and the thoughts and the concerns of the communities were heard. Those communities that were there were people there from Kings County. There were people there from Palmdale, Acton, Agua Dulce, Santa Clarita, Sylmar, Pacoima, Burbank, Anaheim, and San Diego. What? San Fernando there as well, but I was keeping them for last for a reason. But thanks for asking. But they were all there. And each and every person that wanted to speak was allowed to speak. They were given 2 minutes apiece to speak and say whatever they wanted to say. That started off with the folks from Palmdale. Palmdale folks that spoke were positive, happy to see the high-speed rail come to town, and some of their issues had to do with their economy, jobs, and those types of things, and that's where there'll be a station. Acton, Agua Dulce, they had, I counted about 35 people between the two of them. And also, just as generously, the county Supervisor Antonovich also supplied a bus for them to be driven down as well. They made it very clear that they did not want the high-speed rail to come through Acton and Agua Dulce for their own reasons, had to do with where they live, with their community, and they don't want that to be bothered by the high-speed rail and all the issues it brings with it. The city of Santa Clarita, we were obviously there in force. I'd say we had a good 20 people, and I would say a good 15 or so stood up and talked and spoke, including Al Furman. The folks from Pacoima, Sylmar, San Fernando didn't want and do not want the high-speed rail to go through their cities, and they made it, and their communities, and made it very clear. And I'll talk a little bit about San Fernando specifically in a moment. There were people there from Burbank, where there will be a station, Anaheim, also, and San Diego. They were present, and they were positive too, because there will be stations in their cities, and they want the high-speed rail to come, at least the speakers that presented. So they were very positive. In addition, there were representatives of chambers of commerce from different cities along the path, and also people from unions were also in attendance. Overall, I think Chairman Richards did a good job of running the meeting. It was interesting, though, in that when the folks from San Fernando got up, they're very, very concerned because, according to them, the high-speed rail will cut their city in half. And I believe it would be east and west, if I'm not mistaken. And they're very, very concerned. And they made it clear. And in fact, they were extremely emphatic. We had been admonished, the group had been admonished when speakers were finished not to clap, not to cheer, not to boo, those types of things. So when the first speaker from the city of San Fernando got up, he made his presentation, and people did clap. And he was further admonished by Chairman Richards, and he stood right up to him and said, "We are going to clap, we are going to cheer, we are going to let our feelings be known, and that's the way it's going to be." It was very direct, and from that point on, everyone, after every speaker, either clapped or cheered, whatever it is they wanted to do. And it was very interesting that, other than that, I thought he did a good job, but he certainly put himself in a horrible position when he admonished us all to do that, to not do it, and then somebody said, "We're going to." If he had attempted to clear the auditorium, that would have been a horrible, horrible thing for him to do. So he put himself in a bad position with that. To go on to the speakers from Santa Clarita, the mayor of our fine city, Marcia McLean, did just a wonderful job of making a presentation and saying why the city and the people who live in the city of Santa Clarita do not want the high-speed rail. And she's very passionate about what she believes, and she made a nice presentation. Following her was Council Member Tim Ben Boydston, and he also did a very, very fine job. And his was just as passionate and probably more bold and more dramatic and extremely emphatic. And he made his feelings known. And I will tell you that everyone in the audience made it be known that they appreciated very much what he had to say. What else? Now, I mentioned Anaheim. The Anaheim just built, you may have seen in the news, they just completed building a radio station, a train station there, and it's called the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center. So when everything is said and done, there'll be Metrolink, there'll be light rail, there'll be high-speed rail, there'll be buses, there'll be cars, there'll be taxis, all kinds of things going through that station. So just to let you know that that's what they spoke about, that's how far they're invested. So it's an issue that we're all concerned about all over Southern California, and especially in the area where the train will run. And each community had something to say, and they were given the opportunity to do that. There were some common themes that came up, though. One of those common themes was, you say you're listening, this is what the speakers would say to the board. You say you're listening to us, but we don't see you acting on what we ask you to listen to and what we ask you to act on. The other overwhelming message that I heard while sitting there was, we don't want the high-speed rail coming through our communities. Okay? But if the high-speed rail must come through our communities, we want it to go underground. Those were the two messages that I heard. So the only other thing that happened there that I was aware of, we were all sitting around, and we met a train conductor And he was very happy young man, and he was bragging, and as you might expect, that he had just gotten married. So he was very proud of that. And his only concern was he thought that perhaps he had married beneath his station. Anyway, if any of you have any questions about what went on there, please feel free to ask. Merle will be up with the mic.
Hi, I have two questions. Did anybody from the city?
First of all, I'm not Dan Richards, so don't beat up on me.
No, you're about my size, I'd lose. Did anybody from the city just say no to high-speed rail rather than which route?
I can't quote them verbatim. The message is loud and clear. We don't want high-speed rail.
Okay, I heard, I listened to John and Ken, if you know who they are, that when this thing's done, it's not going to be all high speed, and according to the, I guess it was an initiative, I forgot the number, that was passed, it's supposed to go from LA to San Francisco in a certain time frame, and it's not going to. And when I went to the first city thing at Canyon Country, I didn't hear anybody mention that it's just not going to be high-speed rail. So anything you can say?
Well, I think it's been admitted to in the media. The High-Speed Rail Authority has admitted that it's not going to go 300 miles an hour, and that they have had to admit that it's not going to be high speed. It's going to be 100. And I can't tell the exact numbers, but it's not going to be 300 miles an hour like they told us it would be when we voted for it a number of years ago. Also, well,
I'll say it with the microphone, I'm sorry. If they're not doing what the legislation said to do, they either should stop it or be prosecuted for it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a big brown doggle.
Well, I think that your sentiments are sentiments that were very loudly communicated to those folks. I will tell you that the people in Acton were not shy. The people in Agua Dulce were not shy. Certainly the speakers from Santa Clarita were not shy. Pacoima, Sylmar, and San Fernando, no. The message was made very clear, just what you're saying. That message was communicated. You remember, when you're communicating, you have to have a sender, and you have to have a receiver, and you have to have a message, and then that message has to be interpreted, and then it has to be understood. And that's what speakers were saying. You're telling us you're listening, but you're not acting on it. So to make a long story short, yes, what you are saying, people said, and some were a lot more to the point than you were. Anything else? I'll just leave you with this. It's an interesting topic. The governor was on, was it KCET Sunday when I called you, Al? It's ostensibly talking about water, but also the issue of the high-speed rail came up, and he's not budging. And so whatever happens in the courts, whatever happens at the ballot booth, will probably tell the tale. But my issue was, and my assignment was to come and tell you what happened at the meeting. So, and I thought it was a good meeting. The folks that we deal with here in Santa Clarita, when they come to and hold a meeting, I've found them to be honest and forthright with us, and when we're speaking to them, and do good presentations, do their job. Unless you have another question, that'll be it for me. Yes, Patty?
It seems, after hearing what you had to say, Spence, that the communities who are getting a stop seem to be in favor of it, and the communities that are being, that the railroad will go through are not. Okay. So if Santa Clarita had a stop, maybe there wouldn't be objection if we were getting a train stop here?
I don't know. I can't answer that question, but all I can tell you is that the message again was, we don't want it, but if we must, then put it underground. Okay? All right, thanks.